And so that's me. This is the work that I did with my dissertation that until this week has not been seen by anybody but my committee. So
this doesn't work, just put it down.
And I'm not going to play with technology anymore. We're just going to use arrows. It's not my friend today. And so that's who I am. And so y'all are going to get to see this. And I'm excited about that. And we're going to talk about it. The one thing that I want you to understand is that I don't know where you come from. I don't know your life and I don't know your body. If you have had any kind of struggles with your body, some of the stuff that we talk about may be very uncomfortable. If you need to step out, that is fine. If you need to stay after and chat with me, that would be wonderful. If it's not difficult for you and you still want to stay after and chat with me, that's also fine. But it is a very difficult experience sometimes when you learn some of these things. It was for me when I did the research, and so I understand that it will be for some people when they hear it. Okay, we're sort of out of time. I really wanted to know why everybody picked this one, so I know what you wanted to get. And I kind of wanted, who's here a current Widener student? Awesome. Who here has never been to Widener before today? What a lovely mix. And who here is an alumni? I know some of you. All right. So I was going to do introductions for everybody, but we're sort of running short on time, so I'm not going to do that right now, and I'm very sorry because you all look lovely. All right. The first thing I want to do is a little bit of a visualization. I want to get you in a place where you see where this is coming from. If you're comfortable with closing your eyes, please do so. I want you to think about waking up to go to work. And it's a big day. You've been at this job for 3 years. Your names have been on some really successful projects. A few people who came in before you have gotten promotions, and there's a position open that you really want. And today is the day you're going to approach your boss. Today is the day that you're going to walk into that office and you're going to sell yourself and you're going to ask for what's yours. And you have a plan. So you go into your closet and you grab that outfit. You know the one I'm talking about. It's the right colors. It fits in all the right places and drapes in all the other ones. You go to put it on and you have to pull a little harder than you normally would. The buttons just barely reach and they're pulling a little bit. Everything that used to drape perfectly is now just a little more snug. You look into the mirror and you meet your eyes and you realize you've gained weight. How do you feel? Are you as excited and as confident as you were a few moments ago? Do you still feel as deserving of that job? What are the things that go through your head? What changed within the 30 seconds before you went into your closet and now? Open your eyes, please, sir. What do you feel when you find out you've gained a little weight? You feel fine? Disappointed. More nervous than you were like 5 minutes ago. Why? Were you a different person? Not particularly. All right. So this research was a qualitative study. I sat down with 15 different women from all over the Northeast, and they identified personally as women, and they were also recognized at birth as women. So that was the two things that had to happen. And they also had to personally identify as overweight and also be recognized by the BMI as overweight. We're going to talk about the BMI. And here's a little bit of things that you should know. 41 million, 1/3 of the American population are obese. Multiple studies show that weight loss is not terribly effective, and within 2 to 5 years, we return to that base weight no matter how much we struggle. And in 1997, and I know that's a little outdated, but this is pretty powerful, 24% of women said they would give up 3 years of their life to maintain a weight. 3 years of living just to fit into the size they like. So there are sort of three main perspectives on weight. The first one is public health, saying that being overweight or obese is a public health issue. It increases insurance costs, it increases medical issues. We need to diet, we need to be more active. It's a public health concern. And we always hear this, like, change your life, change your life, change your life. You can do it. And they always talk about BMI, but the truth is their research, which never really gets published, is that a 10% loss of weight, just if you lose 10% of your goal weight, you get exponential health increases. So instead of having a goal weight, just losing some weight tends to be helpful. The feminist theory focuses on the fact that weight and size is a way in which to control women. If you go way on back, it'll tell you that weight is part of a plastic concern to distract women from actually fulfilling their potential. So if you tell women they have to meet a certain size and you have to wear makeup, then they'll spend a lot of time focusing on that and less time focusing on equal rights. It also acknowledged that since the majority of the time feeding the family is the task of a woman, in most families, particularly in single mom households and things like that, then in stereotypical gender norms, the women tend to be the ones at risk. And since they also make less money, they're at more risk of making poor nutrition decisions due to access to food. Then along comes fat acceptance. And fat acceptance is essentially saying there's health at every size, focus on what your body can do, acknowledge that fat is sort of a disability in some ways for some people, and quit creating all this stigma to it. Things that are important to understand. The reason I focused on women instead of men is one, because I'm a woman, but two, because although men who are overweight face a lot of stigma, in Western society, their value is not based on their appearance. And despite the war that women have fought, ours still is. And so women tend to suffer greater due to their size than men, just because of the way that society views them. Studies that start as early as 3 years old indicate that children identify silhouettes of overweight people as unfriendly, cheaters, and not to play with. Through college, interviews show that people tend to think of overweight people as unclean, undeserving of love, less desiring of sex, undeserving of attractive partners. A little neurotic teachers have been interviewed and have been told that fat students are more neurotic, less likely to succeed. Some research shows that parents are less likely to help fund the college education of their overweight children. Medical research with doctors and physical therapists shows strong stigma and judgment towards people who are overweight. They are easily frustrated, they spend less time with them, they just don't see a reason in having conversation about health. So, and one of the huge things about this, and this is part of the research as well, individuals who are overweight internalize the stigma, because unlike very many sort of marginalized populations, there's not a lot of group belonging. So there's nowhere to go home and talk about it where somebody goes, hey, this isn't your fault. Everybody goes home and they believe that this is my fault. My life is difficult because if I could just lose 10 pounds, if I could just lose 20 pounds, I would be happier. I would be deserving of a mate. I would be deserving of a good job. BMI is how we calculate weight, and it was this formula was designed in the 1800s, so it's super modern. And according to that, The Rock is clinically obese. According to that guy's unhealthy. Don't tell the carp in the world. Vin Diesel would be overweight, and I really wanted to put women up here, but finding a woman's weight on the internet. Good luck, y'all. All right, so I sat down with these women and I wanted to know what their experience was. The first thing I wanted to know was, can you be fat and sexually satisfied? And they were like, April, you need to dig deeper. And I listened to things greater than me. So I tried to sit down with these people and I wanted to know if it existed, because research doesn't look at it, by the way. There's no research out there that just talks to people who are overweight and goes, hey, are you happy? How's your life going? They don't really do that. It's like, how's your weight loss? So the purpose of this is to let you know what I found and to try to give you a different perspective on how to talk to people if you come across them in your workshop, if you come across them in your life, or if you happen to be a therapist and they sit down in your room. So important things to know: body dissatisfaction was not correlated to BMI. Skinny people, underweight people, normal sized people, however you want to frame these words, everybody has body satisfaction issues. Extreme weight loss through surgical methods was considered very traumatic and did not improve body satisfaction. Self-esteem and weight They've never been a clear connection. It turns out we all lose self-esteem as we age. Go figure. They found that people who were overweight, who belonged to a group such as Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig or some kind of gym at the Curves or something, if they had group membership, including church or choir or anything where they had a place to go, they showed less neurotic traits, which means less disorderly eating and less irrational emotions or erratic emotions. Female sexual dysfunction. Once female sexual dysfunction was diagnosed, weight was a factor, but there's no research that says that it is more dominant in overweight populations than non. And from what research says, there's no difference in sexual schema between normal weight and overweight subjects, all right? So this is the list of people I saw. Out of the people that I interviewed, only one qualified as overweight. Everyone else was obese, and my absolute favorite, morbidly obese. I don't know who thought of those words, but this is that. This is the people that I saw. And I interviewed down south, Pennsylvania, Maine, and Boston, because we should be random. And this is what we found. These are all of the experiences that go into formatting the sexual self, all right? The first one is a sense of otherness. Every woman I spoke to, 14 of the 15 that I spoke to expressed feelings of otherness. And this otherness is this experience of learning that you were different. And I asked all of the women I sat down with, how did you start to realize you were overweight? Tell me how you learned this about yourself. But we don't really learn things until people start telling us we don't learn we're different until people start responding to us. Some of the things I heard was that they were always bigger, not like everyone else. I just was wrong, not as I should be, almost not human. People who got larger in childhood experienced bullying throughout their life. One woman lost an entire set of friends. She had a knee injury. She couldn't play sports. She gained weight. Her friends stopped returning her call. She would get onto the bus and they would make elephant sounds. She would walk down the street and people would be like, hey, why don't you go get a cheeseburger? Because she was alone. Like, she lost this circle of friends and people felt like it was okay. Because remember, being fat's her fault. So this is motivating, right? They expressed limitations, feeling unable to go into public because of the criticism. There was one woman who had a cane, and she said that being fat and visibly disabled made it painful to go into public because she knows that people stare at her. And she knows that they're thinking, if you would just lose weight, my insurance premium would go down. And so she has a very hard time with that. They all experience bullying. And I want to be very clear that when I say bullying, I mean strangers, people who are not connected to our family, because what our family and friends do can be worse than what the strangers in our life do. So they experience conflict from teachers and friends. They lost friends. People told them they were different. One girl expressed asking a guy out, and he's like, no, you're too fat. Instead of just saying, no, thank you. Because they feel like because there is this concept of otherness, and this person says almost not human. And if you look at video diaries of people who struggle with weight, they all have similar stories of feeling like, people taking rights to comment on their bodies. The next thing we come to is contempt. Contempt. This is what we found from the ones that we love, our friends and our family, and we broke it down into 3 different ways: indirect, compassionate, and persecution. Let me give you the best concept of indirect I can give you. One of the women I interviewed said that all of her friends are normal sizes, tend to be 6, 8s, or 10s, and they all go on vacation together. And when vacation time would come in, the woman was like a size 20, I think. When vacation would come around, her friends would be like, oh my God, I have to lose 5 to 10 pounds or I'm just gonna be disgusting. I'm just gonna look disgusting on the beach if I don't lose 5 to 10 pounds. So these people already weigh 60, 70 pounds less than her, and they're saying if they don't lose 5, they're going to be disgusting. And she said, they never treated me poorly, but how do you have this conversation about yourself and not be humiliated when I come out in a bathing suit with you? If you're disgusting, what must I be? Another one is The Biggest Loser, which is a show that legitimately gives all of America the right to criticize your body, to cheer you on when you're losing weight and to criticize you when you're not, and to tell you they're not making enough progress, and it turns your living room into an open forum of other people's bodies and da 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 da. And so if you're an overweight person and you're watching the show, one, just stop. But if you're watching it with other people, you're getting that criticism from the show as well as the people around you. And these are the indirect messages that we internalize. Going shopping with your mom, and she's trying on different clothes, and she's in tears because she's fat and nothing looks good. And you're like, I think we wear the same size. All of these are like indirect experiences of contempt of our bodies telling us. So you can look at me and go, you're beautiful. But if you're like sitting next to me, hating yourself and you need to lose 10 pounds, my ego strength is really going to depend on which one of those messages I hear. The second one is compassionate. This one's nefarious. Compassionate is, it's because I love you that I need to tell you that you should lose about 5 pounds. I just want you to be happy and loved, and it would be easier for you if you lost 10 pounds. I did not interview a woman who did not experience this, who did not at some point in time have somebody in her family tell her, I love you, but the world will love you better if you just lose weight. Or even sort of different to that is walking up and going, don't worry about it. You'll grow taller and the weight will sort of reshape. Because 10-year-olds are sitting around worrying about that before you point that out to them. And this starts at like 6 years old. This one girl remembered her portions being different than everybody else's portions and her plate being taken from her because they were just looking at, they were helping her monitor. So they were all having mashed potatoes and gravy and like cake for dessert, but she was the weird one because she happened to be gaining weight from it. And the third one is persecution. This is this concept that the meaner I am to you, the more motivated you'll be to lose weight. Criticize, you're not going to go out in that, are you? That's going to be terrible. This one woman expressed an experience with her father where he would send her to her room to change. He would stop offering her dinner. He would say something like, you're 5 feet tall and 5 feet round. Like, is that a problem for you? And his behavior then modeled the behavior for the rest of her family. And the larger she got, the less her family called her. They didn't speak to her at Christmas. She could cook, but she wasn't really welcomed at the table. And I would like to tell you that that was one of 15 women, but it wasn't. They all experienced some form of criticism like this, where they're legitimately like, you're fat, you're lazy, go do something, what's wrong with you? So, and this can start depending on the age of which you gain weight, of which you become aware of it. This starts pretty quickly. So they all live with this feeling of otherness, this inhuman feeling. So with all people who learn that they're different, that they're less than, well, not with all people, but with people who want to fight it, they gain a sense of armor, all right? 6 participants expressed tattoos as the most beautiful part of their body. Tattoos gave their body meaning. It gave their appearance some control to them over their appearance. They love their tattoos. One woman said, I could never wear sleeveless shirts until I got my sleeve done, and now I try really hard never to wear sleeves. So she went from only being able to wear long sleeves in July to tank tops in December. So it was kind of a cool story. Clothing was pretty powerful too. This one woman gave a really good example, and I was going to put these up here, but it felt very private to put all their words up here. One woman said, clothing is this magical thing for her. She gets dressed in the morning and she feels really powerful and she'll meet people and she'll talk to them. And then she brings them home and they're going to sleep together. And she's like, and then I'm scared as if I somehow masked 50 pounds in my wrap dress. And when I unwrap this dress, you're going to see the truth. And she was like, I know that's irrational, but that's how I face the world on a daily basis. I put on my makeup, I put on my clothes, and I feel exponentially better than I did in my pajamas. And that's sort of where we got that visualization earlier today, because it makes that much of a difference. So armor became a huge part of developing their self and their ability to relate to people. Self-esteem. Only 2 of the 15 really reported struggling with self-esteem. And I used the Rosenberg scale for this. Pretty much, so the low self-esteem, just perceiving others as more successful, and personally feeling less capable. One of these two people also was a victim of pretty extreme abuse. For the majority, though, the other women tended to base their self-esteem on identifying as caring. And caring is a double-edged sword, because it's like, I'm very caring, followed by, I'm so caring that I never take time to care for myself. Because it becomes an excuse for being overweight. So now I can feel better by saying, well, I'm this way because I'm a mother and I gave myself to my children. I'm this way because I gave myself to my lover, because I give myself to work. And that sort of became that flip side of it. So it was like, I feel good about myself because I'm caring, and it explains away these other things that I feel negatively about. 8 out of 15 were really excited about their career in education. Oddly enough, most of the women I interviewed were master's degrees, but that's probably just because those are the email listservs I have access to. A few of them I did get through. There's a book called Fat Sex, which is a pretty great book. And she helped me recruit some people. And weight was only mentioned 3 times, and for the most part, they felt like it was something they overcame to have good self-worth. So it was something, I feel good in spite of my weight, all right? Acceptance. 5 of the participants expressed predominantly negative feelings toward their bodies, while 8 discussed acceptance as a journey, and 2 were just like, yeah, I love me, I don't know what your problem is. It was an interesting group. And when we talk about acceptance, the 3 sort of main themes that came up were powerlessness, empowerment, and mind-body connection. Powerlessness for some people was very negative, and powerlessness for others was very freeing. So some women who felt like they desperately wanted to lose weight and were completely unable to lose weight, and they felt unable to make the life changes that they needed to make, felt very powerless and very negative about their body. Some of the other women had accepted that this is what their body was, that weight loss is way more than joining Weight Watchers, that sometimes there's genetics involved, that sometimes all of these things, and so that she was powerless to change her body, she was powerless to change it, she might as well accept it and live with it. So for some, powerlessness was a constant struggle that they couldn't overcome, and others, it was a very freeing experience. Like, this is just my body, I can't change it, cheers. This is what I got. Empowerment became very interesting. Sometimes there were people who had lost weight previously, had gained it back, had then held on to that and thought, I have the power to change my body, I'm not willing to make the sacrifices necessary to do it, so I'm just gonna love myself. But I know deep in my mind that if I wanted to make sacrifices, I could change. But who wants to do that? That's exhausting. And so they felt very empowered, and they felt very sexy, and they felt very good about themselves because they could make the changes, they were choosing not to make those life sacrifices, all right? Mind-body connection, and I thought this was the most positive experiences any of these women had with their body had nothing to do with weight. It almost completely had to do with feeling in control of their body and feeling connected to it. So one woman said that she went to grad school and she was poor. And she had an apartment in Center City, and that she couldn't afford internet, and she couldn't afford to eat out. And she walked everywhere because it was cheaper than gas or parking. And she was like, I had to sit with my body. So when I was hungry, I had to make food and I had to make decisions about it. And I knew when I was full, and I put my food away, and I ran at a pace that was very like normal. And she apparently didn't gain weight during grad school, which is awesome. And she felt very connected, in control, and in tune. She said, now I'm very busy, I don't have time to do anything, I'm not sitting with myself, there's always the TV, there's always the internet, sometimes I eat past the point of being full, and I feel uncomfortable that I'm sick, and I never pay attention to my body's signals, and I'm not making decisions, and it's because my life has gotten so hectic that I've lost that connection. She was like, I'm not a vastly different weight, I just don't have the time to sit with me anymore. Another woman was a wilderness counselor for like a summer, and she was like, I was using my body, I was very active, like I knew when I hurt, I knew when I'd gone too much, and that was when it was time to go. The women who meditated tended to have a better relationship. They knew what felt good, they knew what didn't. And they also, again, that connectedness led to empowerment because they felt better able to control things. Some people were dissonant, or they described it as dissonant. And this is an interesting thing because at first you feel like dissonant is, the word dissonant feels bad to me. But these people would go, these women would describe these moments where they would feel amazing and they would feel beautiful and they would feel powerful. And then they would look in the mirror and they'd be like, oh my God, I'm fat. And they would be startled. And then they would walk away from the mirror and proceed with their day and they would be powerful and beautiful and sexy again until they ran into their reflection and they'd be like, oh wait, I'm fat, I'm supposed to feel bad about myself. And it was this cycle that happened for them constantly. And some of them avoided mirrors. They were just like, I feel good when I'm not looking at me. Why would I change this? So that dissonance, that disconnection actually provided them with a lot of comfort and power. So then we got to the meat of it and we asked about sex. And this was really fun. This is really fun. I just asked them how they felt about their sexual self. Do you feel sexual? Do you like it? How do you feel about it? 10 of them felt like their sexual response was fine. Their arousal, their ability to orgasm, all of that was fine. Only one person really felt like any dysfunction in her sex life was weight-based. Most of the people who discussed any sexual dysfunction associated it with anxiety. So that disconnection and feeling overwhelmed and not really having time. 14 of the 15 reported an ability to orgasm regularly with their partners or on their own. The big negative they talked about was sexual limitations, access to partners, comfortable positions, stamina, and endurance. So if you spend your life at one size, reaching orgasm in this one position, then suddenly you're not able to do it because your body has changed. It throws everything into sort of chaos. It's particularly difficult when you have two partners of larger sizes trying to navigate the physical aspects of positions. And it becomes a thing, and they express really deep disappointment and exhaustion and fear because they're always worrying about a new partner. Like, am I going to be satisfying because there are things that I can't do? So that was the major negative that they found. Body spectatoring. Do we know what body spectatoring is? All right, well, I'm going to explain it. Body spectatoring is this phenomenon when we're in the middle of sex, when we're in the middle of everything that feels amazing, suddenly we come outside of our body and we're incredibly concerned about what our body looks like. So people start having sex with the light off, strategically place sheets, pillows under so you can't see the belly sway. All of these things, we start going through mad gymnastics to cover up our body. You've already been naked with these people. They've already seen you, but in your head, you're like, whoa, what if? And so it goes to this. Pretty much 8 of the 15 explain that. That's pretty normal. Body spectating is pretty normal for pretty much people of all sizes. Desirability became a huge part in sexual responses. 10 of the 15 participants stated that sexual satisfaction improves once they can trust in their partners. So sexual satisfaction increases with the number of times they have intercourse because it means that people are like really desire them and they feel confident. 2 stated that they could not have sex until trust was established. So they were completely unable to have casual sex, even though morally they're fine with it. They just could not physically get naked in front of somebody until they knew that they weren't going to hurt them because they'd had so many negative experiences previously. Objectification. This to me was the most interesting part. So we're going to talk about this for a minute because it's really kind of incredible. Pretty much all of these women learned very early on that their bodies were wrong, that they were gross, that they were less than human, that they were undesiring of sex and love. And then like half of them found the internet and sexual fetish and people who crave the fat body. And they go through this promiscuous period. And it is not necessarily a healthy thing. For a lot of women, this period of time in their life was based on giving pleasure instead of receiving pleasure. For a lot of these women, these men would not take them into public. Men or women would not take them into public. So it was very quiet. It was very behind doors. For some of these women, it was their choice that it stayed behind doors because they couldn't understand why anybody would want to take them on a date. And it was through this period of time that some of these women who'd spent their life being disgusting and unwanted and unlovable started to discover the power of their body. Their body gave pleasure. Some of them weren't ready to realize it could receive it, but they gave pleasure. And some of them talk about this time as a very difficult time. It's very emotional. They were reaching out, they were acting out. But everybody who had this period of time also talks about how it was crucial for them the next time they got into a relationship. Because once they learned what their body could do, they started to think that maybe they had something to offer. And some of them were lucky enough to find relationships with people who could really have that conversation, who could be really supportive and could be part of that growth, and they could take all of these like experiences and then start being open. But it took something extreme as that objectification to even allow them to open that door in their head, to even like begin. And I think we're really, probably not people in this room, but society in general tends to feel like objectification is always bad and it's always negative and there's nothing positive to take from it. But for a lot of people who are really scared and really feeling unwanted, for these women, it was part of their growth. If you can do it without it, rock on. But if you run across somebody who's in that phase, just ask them what they can take away from it, you know? And it was a huge part. And another woman, and I thought this was sort of interesting, she had been medically objectified, like her body was just an object. She'd been incredibly ill, and she'd been naked and poked and prodded by like 1 billion people. And she one time went to a psychiatrist who wanted to see her colostomy bag, as if it was okay to ask. And she just showed him because she didn't even think about it. And she was like, oh yeah, because she was so used to people just wanting to see her body for like a medical reason that it didn't click in her head that this is wrong. But like that, and that medical detachment is what allowed her to move into the sexual realm. And she worked on it and she found a better therapist and a better psychiatrist. She moved forward. But a lot of these women who went through this and it can be very traumatic, and it has to be processed, but most of them learned from it and took it into the next situation. Does that make sense? What is that? So what this sort of leads to when we talk about weight and when you see somebody in your room is that it's important to take the focus off of weight loss, right? Like, stop asking, oh, have you lost weight? Oh, have you? And it's more to focus on how are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling about your body? Why are you doing what you're doing? Do you feel good about this? Like, what decisions have you made? Are you happy the way you are? Focusing on what your body is and does. And it's sort of funny because Zuleika said that in Jamaica they say fluffy. Fluffy is my favorite word because when I talk to people about their bodies, I want you to focus on what's really positive about it. And I'm incredible to hug. Like, yeah. Like, if you're having a bad day and you just need a hug, this is nothing but comfort. And so fluffy is a pretty accurate term, I think, right? And so you go by that, and I tell people, I was like, just spend some time. Like, is your skin soft? Are you plush to touch? What does it keep you from doing that you want to do? If you want to climb Mount Everest, you might want to work out. And I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. If you can do it at my size, power to you. But if that's what you want to do, you need to do what's necessary to do it. If that's not in your lifestyle, quit trying to be that body and be the body for your life and for your preferences, and work on changing those goals and changing those perspectives, and create realistic goals. Remember that medical public health journals say that minimal weight loss creates exponential improvements. But we always focus on the plateau and getting stuck, and there's always this frustration and disappointment because we're not reaching those weights. Validate sexual experiences instead of criticizing. You know, let them, like, ask them what they can take from it, validate what they're going through, make sure they're being safe. And that's basically it. Quit working towards change and physical and really focus on mental. Understand that body image isn't about body size. It's about body relationship. It has nothing to do with your size. It has everything to do with your relationship with it. So that's pretty much all I have. we take questions and discussions? Anybody have anything to say?
In your interviews, did anyone touch on or talk about being fat as children and the way that that related to gender identity in like child play?
They didn't talk about gender identity. They all talked about being overweight when they were children. Well, the ones that had talked about being overweight as children. Some people of them were put on diets very early. One was in first grade, and it did not impact her gender identity to my knowledge, but it impacted her identity to her peers. For example, her teacher announced at the birthday party, Susie can't have cake today, she's on a diet like Miss G. So Susie had to sit at the table with the teacher while all of her classmates ate cake and drank juice, and she wasn't saying. It definitely impacted her identity as like a cohort, as a classmate. In first grade, she was sitting with the teacher instead of her friends. So they didn't talk about gender identity because one of the main things is they already had to be, and most of them hadn't had gender issues coming up to this point, because this study was very small and it was very specific, and it had to be people who have always pretty much identified as women. But it definitely impacted their gender roles. So
I saw that your chart about who your subjects were, you had listed sexual orientation. I was curious whether there were correlations or things you saw based on folks being LGBTQ or heterosexual.
I was super hopeful that that would happen, but it didn't. It's really unfortunate that the westernization of the female body and the perception has impacted the LGBT community in a really strong way. No, they were all sort of equally, they all equally sort of went through the same thing, and there's not that much more body acceptance from what I found. The research also said, like, feminist theory proposes that sort of the lesbian and genderqueer community should be more accepting of a larger body, and all of the theories say that it's more incorporating, but all of the research says that it's not. Sorry, Rachel.
So did any of your people that you interviewed, did any of them have children, or did any of them discuss how they would, based off of how they grew up and the negative feelings that they felt, how they would change if they were to raise children, create more of a body positive family?
A few of them did have children. I'm trying to think back. I actually interviewed a mom and a daughter. I interviewed both of them. And then I interviewed a woman who has 2 children. And the mom and the daughter had the mom had pretty positive body image at this point, and the daughter does too, but the daughter recalls being younger and the mom constantly dieting, and they became workout partners to lose weight, not just to be healthy. And so the mom did some buffering, but not as much as she probably wanted to. The woman that I interviewed with 2 kids currently has her children on a diet program with her. Like, she's doing like this really big fitness program, and so she promotes fitness and dedication in her house. So it has some body love element to it, but it's still very much focused on maintaining, which is something that's really important to her. But I think it's mostly a non-judgmental space. Sorry, Tracy.
I just wanted to kind of extend what you were saying, thinking about it from an intersectional perspective. I was wondering if you have received any feedback from the folks of color that you discussed about any intercultural things that they experienced related to their racialized body as well as their obese body.
So I was really not able to get many people of different races, which was really disappointing. And I tried. But the one woman that I interviewed who was African American was the one that was complete acceptance, total body love. But she also mentioned that she sort of hits that ratio where the stomach and the butt are well proportioned, and that's part of how she gets, like, so she feels really good and really positive and really empowered, but she also recognizes that her proportions are right. So she's really thick, but she's well proportioned, and she's super popular in her neighborhood. And that she actually had more trouble before she gained weight. But she didn't really care. She was like, because before I gained weight, I wasn't really interested in men. And then when I gained weight, it was all gravy. So she discussed that, and she was the only one I really got to have the conversation with. I just didn't get the response I wanted from like a diverse group. If I could do this again, I would keep going until I got, but you know, graduation. At some point you want to finish. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a very different thing. And when I did the research, we talked a lot about like Southeast Asian populations. And I think there was an African population as well, where there's this one culture that if your women are big enough to where they need help walking, you're very successful.
I guess the irony is of it too that I think about, I mean, since I'm from population, I want to add to the research. I also feel like there's this interesting interplay that comes when intercultural meets mainstream, because then you get, well, you can be thick up to a certain point. And then once you go past that, then you start to get the same messages that you might get from more mainstream. And so it's really interesting to me how that's going to play out in future research in this area. Because, yeah, on a lot of level, the assumptions that have in literature that, oh, you know, Black women, you know, they've got all the confidence, they don't have self-esteem issues, and it's like, well, not so much. Right? So
Pretty much what the research is saying right now is that the westernized view of beauty is now a virus, and it's infecting pretty much every culture. Whereas feminist theory thought that the LGBT genderqueer should be a totally welcoming experience, it's not. Whereas they thought African American and Latin people would be really accepted for their bodies, now it's not. When you look at Bollywood, thicker used to be better, and now thinner is coming in. And it's sort of infecting the world. There's a culture near Hawaii, like one of the islands that had been completely absent of media. And so naturally somebody brought magazines. And now those people have weight issues. So it's really, really infecting. It's being adopted by pretty much everybody who comes across it. And depending on how far you want to get into it, there's this concept that as women demand more political and world space, they are forced to take up less physical space. And I don't have this book on me, and I'll have to, if you want the title, I'll find it and I'll get it to you. But it traces the size of women over a period of time. So like when you were housewives, or when we were housewives, and that was pretty much our only role, you could have sort of thicker waist and you had the full skirts. But then when they started working, you went to the pencil skirts and people had to be thinner and take up less space. And then when they pushed back into the home, they could be thicker again. And so as the political climate changes, the expectations and ideals of women's beauty changes. And they'll tell you this, like in Renaissance paintings, you see all of these like sort of curvy, voluptuous women, and that's because it was an indication of wealth.
Yeah.
If you were rich enough to get big and you didn't have to work enough to lose it, you were seen as well off. In 2015, it's the healthy food that's more expensive. So if you have access to the healthy food and you have time to go to the gym and you have time to hire people to clean your house and help with your kids so that you can go to the gym, or you don't have to work 3 jobs so you can support your family so you have time to work out. If you manage to do all of those things, then you are seen more desiring as well, because now you've reached the physical fitness and you have the resources that people want, and it makes you more attractive. So there are a lot of reasons they say size changes in the preferences and the ideals. But the stigma of being seen as overweight or overly overweight hasn't changed much in the past 20 years. I get searched at the airport. This is a new experience for me. I tend to be mostly unfazed by things. But I get searched at the airport every time I fly. For 5 years, I've flown 3 to 4 times a year, and I get searched. Like, I get patted down, my hands get scanned, my feet get swabbed, my bags get searched. I don't think there's a part of me that hasn't been patted down by national security at this point. And I finally asked, I was like, what is this about? And they were like, the contours of your body. So along with a public health threat, I'm now a threat to national security. You're welcome. And I put this on my Facebook to see what would happen. And pretty much everyone was like, is that why they do that to me? Is that what's happening? And it's every time. I think I've flown once in 5 years where I haven't been searched. And I actually think I was coming back from Jamaica. So, real talk. So that's all I have. It's my understanding there are response or feedback forms.
Yeah, I have some of those. There should be more at the registration desk.
I would really appreciate them because I've just started sort of presenting this. So if y'all could do that, that would be great. If you have any, does anybody else have any other questions? I'm sorry.
I was wondering really quickly if any of the women talked about masturbation as an important part of their sexual selves.
Some. Not nearly as many as I would have liked. That's just my personal bias that you don't have when you do interviews at all. Some expressed it. Some talked about masturbation as an integral part. Particularly some of the people, one of the women I interviewed has been abstinent for a long period of time, but still considers herself strongly sexual, and it's mostly because of her masturbation and her relationship to the body. She just has a very difficult time leaving her house. And people have experienced incredible abuse through partners, and so self-love becomes a huge part. But it actually became more of a part for people who have been abstinent for a while than it was like the daily people with partner. There were some people whose sexuality was based solely on how their partner saw them, so masturbation was not a huge part of their sexuality. The big thing to take away is that there was nothing really off the curve of normalcy when I interviewed these women. Like, they were all pretty much the same struggles that everybody has. And they weren't all part of this program, so they weren't all into self-love and masturbation. But a few of them that were abstinent talked about it being a huge part. But for the most part, the women that found their sexuality did it through that period of promiscuity and objectification. So, yes, ma'am. Sorry.
I know you spoke about it a little bit, and you said that kind of like the stigma around overweight people has been there for like it has stayed consistent for the past 20 years. Mm-hmm. But as I'm 23, I felt like back in the 90s or 2000s that it was a little bit not as restricting, especially from the media that I got, especially like on Disney Channel, there was more diversity in terms of culture and in terms of body shape. Whereas now with my sister, I think I've seen one overweight character in all of her shows, Disney and in it. So I would have thought it would have gotten even more strict as it's gotten.
It may have, but that study that said that women would give up 3 years of their life was from the 90s. And I remember all that, having that larger girl with the freckles. And I remember Donkey Lips from Salute Your Shorts, which pretty much says everything you need to say about fat people represented in TV. The guy's name was Donkey Lips. And that's what I remember as representation. I don't know if it's gotten stricter. I know that the size has gotten smaller. Like what would have been acceptable in like a size 8 or a size 10 has become less acceptable in 2015. So I know that the expectations are smaller and smaller, but I don't know if the stigma has really changed. Because a lot of the research that I found was from the 90s. But yeah, like it's not really, I mean, now you get more adult people, like you get Melissa McCarthy and Rebel Wilson, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't watch kids shows anymore, so I'm out of the loop on those.
I just think about like all the people who have changed, like Rima Simone and Monique, who used to be like idols, like oh, big girls doing it, and now they've lost all this weight. And I just want to do this correlation to them.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer Hudson did it.
Jordan Sparks.
Latifah did, Jordan Sparks. And I think part of it is that they get famous being the underdogs, and then they have to subscribe to pressure. So like you get the fan base, and now that you're there, you have the money and the equipment to change. Because a lot of what they say about weight is that a lot of it is about the privilege and the resources to make it happen. Like if I could pay a chef to cook for me every week, I'd probably still have donuts. But but it becomes easier. It becomes easier when somebody else prepares your meal for you, because what you microwave, what you pick up on your way home is considerably more difficult than what you, like it's considerably worse for you than what you would just cook. So are there any other questions or anything like that? I thank y'all for y'all's time. that's, I have like 15 minutes left of this, right? So y'all have a break? No, I'm done.
So there are 2 feedback forms here, take them or ask for registration.
It was-